Hey, this is Dave with Brazos Valley Barbell, and today we're going to be talking about conventional deadlifts. So I know most of the videos on YouTube and the videos on my channel have been about sumo deadlifts, and I've tried to make most of the videos in a way that really would transfer to both sumo and conventional, but I know there's a lot of things, particularly about the setup, that are a little bit different. So we're going to be going into all of those today. So I went through a little bit of a workout with the conventional deadlifts, and you'll see some of the things that we can look at with individual lifters and particularly with myself that will show why I'm so much better with sumo than I am conventional. A lot of it comes down to leverages and those kind of things. So while I think that conventional is kind of the easier version, that I think as far as technique, that people can jump into conventional a little bit better, it really is not going to be for everyone, and not everybody is going to be stronger that way. But I use it for almost every new lifter, kind of until proven otherwise that sumo will be better for them long term. I think it's probably a better exercise for teaching people good mechanics, the hinge mechanics, making back stronger, probably better for hypertrophy. So if you are a newer lifter and maybe just getting into powerlifting, I would still train conventional a whole lot. If you're deadlifting twice a week, make one of those conventional and do a lot of off season. I used to do all of my off season, or not all of it, but half of it probably conventional, and it's really benefited me long term. But it got to the point where I had to be a little bit more specific, and now most of my work is sumo. So this workout I actually haven't deadlifted conventional in almost 2 years. So I was pretty happy with the technique and the stuff that I'll be able to show here. So we'll jump into the videos.
Okay, so if you've watched a lot of the other deadlift videos, you'll see a lot of similarities between how I get set up for my conventional and for my sumo. So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm finding the hinge. So I'm setting my hips back, reaching for the bar, and then wedging in. So the difference between the video where I was talking about anchoring with sumo deadlifts, really the only cue differences are going to be the cue is going to be wedging versus anchoring. So this position right here is a big part. I know I've talked about finding the good neutral back right here, and then putting a lot of force down into the floor to really get going. So that's going to be a big part of how I get set up with this. Is I start off by hinging and finding everything in my upper back. So the first thing that I'm really trying to find is a good neutral spine, and then from here I am letting my arms hang long, and I use the cue reach for the bar. So I create a lot of that separation, kind of, or the distance really in my shoulders and my upper back, and reach down to the bar, but then pull my lats into my back pockets, or shoulder blades into my back pockets, to really set all those positions. So I think the biggest difference is going to be using the cue just like all the other ones. We're pushing our feet into the floor, reaching for the bar, and then I keep that tension down into the floor while I wedge my knees in. So we'll look at it right here. So there's a lot of force from my feet pushing down to the floor from here, and then from this position I'm just going to wedge my knees in, and that's where I'll get my shoulders, or my chest, to pull up and back like we've seen in those the sumo positions. So the conventional, I think, is relatively easy, where it's a lot more natural to find that position. We'll just set, once we get that hinge position, I just find it here, and I just drop straight down to the bar and don't let the bar move. Reach, wedge in, and then one of the best cues is going to be just to leg press the floor. So I'll go over some of the cueing I do as far as like knees and things like that, to really make sure that we're using the legs appropriately, right after we look at foot position in this next video. So hips back, reach for it, and then one of the things that we'll see with me, why this is a challenging movement for me more so than sumo, is basically we'll keep going here. The length of my femurs in this position is super long. So my moments, if we take a look from where my shoulder is down to the barbell, this distance right here to my hips is very, very long. So this movement for me is not very efficient, where I've talked about the conventional being a good movement, a better movement for creating hypertrophy and strength in my back. I used to do a whole lot of these. I think it's one of the reasons my hamstrings are as strong as they are, my back is as strong as what it is. but this movement is just not very efficient for me because that length, that moment from the bar to my hip at the bottom is so big. So that's another reason why I miss off the floor. So foot position right here, what we're gonna see is that my feet are basically right underneath my hips. I also take a little bit more of a shin angle instead of it being, we'll draw from my heel, instead of it being perfectly straight up and down, there's a little bit of an angle right there, obviously. So because I miss off the floor and because my femurs are as long as what they are, I'm trying to get a little bit more work for my legs off the floor to be able to create this movement. So I use that slight forward shin angle to really get things going, and I think that's a pretty good tool for most people to use. Now the problem when we go back to the other angle is going to be that if that shin angle right there pushes the bar too far forward, then we might miss around the knees because the bar stays forward. So as long as we keep the bar close and pull it in, I can really create a lot of speed. Now what we can see from here is that I'm using still a lot of the cues as being chest up and through. I'll use the cue chest between your arms is when you're pushing the floor. So leg press the floor and then chest pulls up and through your arms to really get things going. Just like with the sumo, when we create all that, we create the anchor down at the bottom, and then after that it's all chest. I'm just keeping my legs stationary, driving down the floor, and chest comes up and through. The different cue here, almost the anchor position, might be the knees. So from the side angle, what we'll see is that the biggest cue to keep your legs underneath you and to keep you from doing kind of a stiff leg deadlift is going to be patience with your knees. So I don't like saying things like push your hips forward or anything like that to try to keep your hips close to prevent that good morning kind of position. We say patience with the knees and basically lock your knees into place. So we'll see from here, we'll let me run a little bit forward. Once I wedge my knees in, so lats, knees, from right here, I want to be patient. I want to try to, my knees have to clear out of the way just a little bit to make sure that the bar gets out of the way. But if that line is going to be the most forward my knees can be. So as I start to pull, you'll see that they'll slide back some to get out of the way. And you see my back kind of rounding and those kind of things. If my back didn't round, then my hips would be further back. And where, there's for every gimme, there's a gotcha. So if I kept my back more neutral, it'd be more required for my hamstrings. My upper back is strong enough in this position to be able to overcome it. If it gets worse, then I miss. So that's kind of a challenge there. So from this position, the cue is going to be patient with my knees. Now, if they slipped back further, then this angle would be, or my hips would be much further back, and it would be a lot more challenging for me to finish that rep. It would become all hamstrings are back. But from this position, I can maintain a little bit more drive from my legs off the floor. So that's where we wedge in, and then all that force is coming from my legs down into the floor. Chest comes up and through, and by maintaining that neutral back and being patient with my knees and not letting them lock out too soon, I'm able to maintain leg drive down into the floor with it. So these next few reps are challenging reps for me. That last one was 595. This one's 640, which was actually a conventional deadlift record for me. I don't think I'd ever pulled above 615, or I'd done 635 on a deadlift bar. But here I took a couple swings at 305 or 672 just to see what I had, and you see right there I miss off the floor. But I'm pretty happy with my positions right here. So you can see that I pull slack really well, hinge back, and then I maintain a pretty good posture, right? So legs down on the floor right here. This is just like with sumo. This is one of I think the most crucial positions, is that we have to create tension here. If I'm not pushing hard down into the floor here, then I'm never going to be able to pull slack adequately. So I push down and I maintain that force down to the floor while I pull my chest through, and then hopefully we don't miss like this. So you can see all those processes happening right there. So a couple working sets right here just to take a look at how those cues are applied on sets that are a little bit easier. So force down on the floor, patience with my knees here. Watch how my knees don't lock out immediately. I try to keep them bent at least until the bar gets to my knees to maintain that force down on the floor, and it's all chest leading through. So one more from the side. Hips back, force into the floor, and then we pull your chest through, and that should engage your lats. So sometimes people cue more of the upper back. I like cueing the chest stuff to create that tension in your lats. Either way, the biggest difference is, in my mind, if I cue the chest, it helps me keep my arms long. If I cue the lats, sometimes people retract a little bit too much.
So like I said earlier, conventional deadlifts can be a very, very useful tool for building a lot of mass in your upper back, your legs, getting you generally stronger overall, but they're not for everybody. So hopefully this video can help everybody use better technique when you're applying your conventional deadlifts and make them a whole lot stronger. But some of the accessory exercises, I've mentioned these in other videos, but that I think work very, very well for conventional would be touch and go deadlifts are a good one, especially in further off-season programming, because most people's weakness is going to be their backs and their hamstrings. So we treat this similar to like an RDL, where it's controlled in both directions and it's really just meant to build muscle. Most conventional deadlifters don't miss off the floor. I'm kind of the exception there. So I don't think it's as important to spend a whole lot of time with that very first rep. Obviously, as you get closer to competition, specificity becomes very important, and you do have to do a lot of those first reps with the dead stops. But touch and go deadlifts for higher reps, I think, can be really, really good. Conventional deadlifts, lots of barbell rows and upper back work very well. The paused deadlift, I still try with almost every lifter that I have pulling conventional, but I'd say it's kind of 50-50, where probably more like 75% of sumo deadlifters find a lot of success with the paused deadlift. Half conventional deadlifts, it's just too taxing. It slows people down too much and it doesn't really feel very natural. So I'm sure there's a lot of others that I use, but those are kind of my go-tos. So thanks a lot for watching. Hopefully that was helpful. Subscribe to the channel if you liked the video. Give me a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.